I discussed the situation with State Farm. They talked about different people, different companies that they would be willing to pay to come in, and the decision was based on as I recall, the State Farm person I was dealing with saying something like that this company's done work for us before, and that was, I said, that's fine, something like that.
Well, if they decided to hire her and pay her, why did she file a lawsuit against you for payment for that job in October '09 or September '09?
Well,
That calls for...
wait, yeah, I'll make the objections here, my friend. Objection, that calls for speculation as to why she would have sued him. That's only information within her own mind.
Was she eventually paid? And who paid her?
Well, that's a compound question, but you can answer that.
Was she eventually paid? Yes, I believe she was paid, and she was paid by State Farm.
So why did she sue you?
Objection, that calls for
The same
speculation,
question, yeah.
lacks foundation.
You've asked that before, please.
Hold on, let me make the objections. Calls for speculation, lacks foundation.
Okay, what was she asked to do at the premises? What was the goal of her visit?
Initially, she was to do an assessment and to take samples to determine if there was lead in the unit. You were there and you showed her in and through the apartment, and I stood out in the driveway.
Was she there to assess the contents of the debris from the spill into the garages?
I don't think that was exactly what she was there for. She was not specific. I believe she was there to make an assessment based on her professional experience and her expertise in this area, and she could have done whatever she felt was necessary. I wasn't telling her what to do.
All right. Who did direct her as to what the work order was?
Assuming anybody did.
Nobody did.
Okay.
That's why I stood specifically in the driveway outside the garage. I didn't even enter the garage. I stayed away from her as you escorted her through the garage and then up into the unit. And I stayed virtually in the same position.
Okay, to your knowledge, how many samples of paint did she take?
If you
I
know.
don't recall.
Okay.
Do you know from where she took the samples?
Somewhere in the unit. I don't recall. It's been so long.
Okay, do you remember the broad conclusions of the report, her report?
Well, could you rephrase that question, please?
What were Ms. Shifa's conclusions from her environmental report about lead and asbestos?
I haven't read that report in a long time. I don't recall.
So whether there is asbestos or lead on the premises is significant to you, that you would not remember the results of the test?
No objection, that's argumentative.
Okay.
I mean, the
When,
document speaks for itself.
well, I think as property manager, wouldn't it be your duty to review the report?
I did at the time.
And what decision did you make based on that report?
I sent it to State Farm immediately. I faxed it to State Farm immediately.
Okay, so the report was sent to you and it went back to State Farm. But I thought State Farm ordered the work. Why wouldn't they receive the report?
They did. I wanted to be sure that they had a copy, so I faxed it to them.
Okay.
maybe this will help with that, so you'll understand it. It was my understanding that she faxed the first read and then to fax it to State Farm. I turned it around and faxed it to State Farm without even having someone read it to me, so they would have it right away.
Okay, after an alleged debris spill into garages, in your opinion, would it make sense to test the debris or to test paint in the unit?
Well, objection, that calls for speculation. It also is outside the realm of his expertise.
So, just logic.
Well,
They
no.
can't ask a question regarding a logical
I'm
means
not
by
an
which
expert
something
in
should
that
be
area, and
tested.
I believe it's an incorrect question.
Okay, why was I given permission to order my own tests?
I did not give you permission. It wasn't like you raised your hand in the classroom and asked for permission to be excused for a few minutes.
I don't know if that's an analogy to what I'm asking. I was authorized to get my own tests done by your attorney, Mr. Greenfield. Why was I authorized to do that?
Well, that calls for speculation as to what's in my head, assuming there is anything.
Well, you're acting on his behalf, so he has to decide why.
Well,
I'm sorry, I
saying,
don't-
he doesn't know what I was thinking.
I don't know. I don't
Can't
know.
answer.
So does Mr. Greenfield act on his own volition without consulting with you first?
Well, let me also, I'm gonna instruct him not to answer that question, because now you're getting into the potential attorney-client privilege. He's the property manager and acting agent of the owner. As such, there's an attorney-client privilege. I can't let him answer
All right,
that
who
question.
decided to allow me to get the premises tested and gave me permission? Somebody had to do it.
Why?
Yeah, if you know.
Why? You-
Because I've
All
emailed
right,
to that
well,
effect.
here, let me shortcut it. I think I did, quite candidly. I'm not the deponent here, but I thought I did.
Okay. And do you remember the results of the tests that I had taken?
I remember that they were flawed.
In what manner were they flawed?
You provided the bottle, the sample bottle that the gentleman put the contents of whatever samples he took into, and that's a flawed test. It's totally unreliable. A proper test, the technician brings his own materials and equipment, and they are already assured to not have or contain any materials that might be foreign. They're pure, they're sterile.
So you're saying that the technician didn't take any of his own samples?
I'm saying he put them in a bottle you provided, and that was on the report.
Well, that's not true, but I'm not going to get into it. Did the technician, to your knowledge, take wipes of lead for lead?
I don't recall.
What were the results of the wipes for the lead? You don't recall the results?
No, I thought the whole report was bogus, as did State Farm.
Are you an expert in
No.
environmental testing?
Absolutely not.
And how can you know that?
I said I thought.
Well, why don't you just go ahead and answer your question. If you can remember what the results were, regardless of the methodology, what
No,
were
I
the
can't.
results?
I can't remember what the results were.
Okay.
So when the city came in and conducted tests and issued a violation in February of '09, what was your response to that notice of violation?
I sent it to State Farm. I alerted Mr. Greenfield, and the remediation process was begun as soon as it could possibly be done. I turned it over to State Farm to do because it was their subcontractor or their company's, their chosen company's subcontractor that had the containment breach
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately then they hired them. It was their responsibility, so they paid for the remediation.
Okay, can you explain why a line